The email landed in my inbox 3 days after my son Leo's 6th birthday party, and it wasn't a belated apology or a simple thank you note. It was a cold, formal invoice demanding $50 for damages and associated costs entirely from the parents, my sister-in-law Diana and her husband, Michael, who had not only ghosted Leo's party without so much as a text, but had done so after confirming their attendance for their 2 children, Liam and Olivia, thereby throwing off my catering and seating plans. The audacity of the charge was staggering, listing premium wine breakage, catering cancellation fees, and emotional distress from their supposed absence, turning their rude no-show into a financial attack. When I immediately replied with a simple, unequivocal no, and blocked their number, they escalated the situation to a level of calculated, malicious insanity that I couldn't have predicted. They actually filed a false police report against me, claiming I had threatened them and demanding the money under duress, dragging local law enforcement into a pathetic familial dispute over a missed children's birthday party and a ridiculous, fraudulent bill. The sheer, shocking escalation from a no-show to a false criminal complaint didn't just infuriate me, it gave me the final, necessary evidence to execute the revenge I had been quietly planning for years, a revenge that would finally and publicly expose Diana and Michael's long history of financial abuse and toxic narcissism to the one person whose opinion they valued above all others, my husband's grandmother Eleanor, the silent iron-fisted matriarch who secretly held the financial strings to their entire comfortable existence. I need to know, absolutely, was I wrong for not simply paying the ridiculous $150 to make the fabricated police report go away, and instead choosing to fight back with the full, devastating force of my evidence, knowing the consequence would be the total and spectacular financial ruin of my sister-in-law and her husband? Tell me if you would have chosen peace at any price or the total, irreversible exposure of their crimes. To understand why $150 led to the involvement of both the police and a matriarchal financial intervention, you need the painful context of my decade-long relationship with the entitled twins, as I privately called them Diana, my husband David's sister, and Michael, her aggressively self-important husband. They were the epitome of affluence, by association, living a lifestyle far exceeding their actual income, maintaining a facade of effortless wealth that was in reality almost entirely subsidized by the family, particularly by David's paternal grandmother Eleanor. Eleanor, a deeply private, old money woman, controlled the vast majority of the family's wealth and discreetly funded Diana and Michael's house payments, school tuitions for Liam and Olivia, and most of their luxuries, all under the condition of absolute, public discretion and critically impeccable presentable behavior. Diana and Michael, masters of superficial charm, played the role perfectly for Eleanor, but behind closed doors they were toxic, narcissistic, and fiercely entitled, treating David and me, the couple who actually worked hard and lived within our means, with constant, sneering contempt. Their treatment of my son Leo was particularly cruel. Leo, a sweet boy on the autism spectrum, often required a little extra patience and understanding, something Diana and Michael completely lacked. They viewed Leo's differences as an inconvenience, frequently excluding him or treating him like a social liability at family gatherings. Leo's 6th birthday party was supposed to be a low-key, fun event at a local park, carefully planned around his sensory needs. Diana and Michael, in their usual fashion, confirmed their attendance, and that of their 2 children, only to ghost the event entirely. No call, no text, nothing. When David called later, Diana offered a flippant, one-sentence excuse about a spontaneous weekend getaway, and hung up. The insult to Leo, who had specifically asked for his cousins, and the insult to me, who had budgeted for their food and activities, was already profound, a signature move in their playbook of petty cruelty. The invoice, however, was a move straight out of the criminal handbook. The $150 wasn't just pulled from thin air, it was a deliberately manufactured itemized list of complete fiction. $450 premium wine replacement fee, for a bottle of wine they claimed I owed them which I didn't, $600 emotional distress for Liam and Olivia missing the party. It's a completely fictional concept designed to sound vaguely legal, and $800 security deposit for future vandalism, say an outright threat. It was an aggressive financial intimidation tactic, a way to assert control and make me, the one they viewed as less than, pay for their own rudeness. My refusal and subsequent blocking of their contact lines sent them into a blind, entitled rage, leading them to their catastrophic overreach, the false police report. The report, filed with a distant police precinct where they claimed I lived, stated I had sent them threatening emails, demanding money, and that I was stalking their children, a total fabrication intended to coerce the $150 out of me through fear and legal leverage. A confused officer actually called me 2 days later, asking about the strange report. I calmly explained the situation, provided the officer with the fraudulent $150 invoice, and stated my intent to press charges for harassment and filing a false police report. This exchange, which I immediately documented, was the key. It transformed their petty attempt at financial bullying into a documented, police-involved act of malicious, fraudulent behavior, the one thing that would absolutely, immediately violate the terms of their financial arrangement with Eleanor. I knew that Eleanor, with her rigid old-world values, demanded absolute probity and zero scandals from her beneficiaries. The combination of the fraudulent invoice and the false police report was the legal and ethical smoking gun I needed. My husband, David, who had suffered under their contempt for years, was finally ready to act. He had always been terrified of confronting his sister and the possibility of fracturing the family, but the fraudulent police report was an attack on his wife and his son, an unforgivable line crossed. We took all the documentation, the original party invitation, Diana's flippant text excuse, the ridiculous one's $850 invoice, the detailed log of the police officer's call, and compiled it into a single, devastating portfolio. Our target wasn't the police or a small claims court, it was the silent, absolute authority, Grandma Eleanor. So that was the situation I was in. My sister-in-law and her husband ghosted my son's birthday party, then tried to charge me a fraudulent $850, and when I refused, they filed a malicious false police report against me. I held the full, documented evidence of their financial and legal fraud, the very behavior that violated the terms of their secret financial support from the family matriarch, Eleanor. Before I tell you the specific, absolute, and immediate way I used this evidence to confront Eleanor, the precise move that triggered the total, irreversible financial collapse of Diana and Michael's entire subsidized lifestyle, ensuring they lost every cent of their secret family funding, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have prioritized the family peace and ignored the attack? Or would you have chosen the clean, surgical exposure of their fraudulent lives to the one person who controlled their financial existence? How complete does justice need to be when they target your child and involve law enforcement? Let me know your thoughts right now, because the moments that followed were a cold, perfect masterpiece of familial justice and financial reckoning. The meeting with Eleanor was not a confrontation, it was a presentation. David and I requested a private audience with her, an honor rarely granted. She met us in her impeccably preserved austere study, her expression one of quiet, intimidating neutrality. We didn't lead with emotion, we led with facts and legal documents laid out neatly in a manila folder, the language she understood best. David, finally finding his voice and his courage, spoke first, detailing the years of contempt, the exclusion of Leo, and the outright ghosting of the party. I took over for the technical core of the presentation, laying out the timeline, the ghosting, the subsequent fraudulent $850 invoice, a document Eleanor read with visible disgust, scrutinizing the fabricated itemized list, and finally, the ultimate betrayal, the documented police call log which clearly stated that Diana and Michael had filed a false police report against me, a direct, undeniable act of malicious legal fraud. I finished by stating the core issue with cold precision. Eleanor, Diana and Michael have not only engaged in malicious harassment and attempted financial extortion against David's wife, but they have committed documented legal fraud by filing a false police report. This is a pattern of behavior that directly conflicts with the values of probity and discretion you demand of your beneficiaries. They crossed a boundary when they involved law enforcement against a family member over a fictional $150 debt. We didn't ask for a specific punishment, we simply presented the undeniable truth and the evidence of their deep ethical rot. Eleanor's reaction was terrifyingly calm. She didn't raise her voice or express outrage. She simply closed the manila folder with a quiet, sharp click and stated, "I see." She looked at David, nodded in acknowledgement of his courage, and then looked at me with an expression of profound, quiet respect. "Sarah, thank you for providing the clarity I needed. I believe this matter is now concluded." The meeting was over in 15 minutes, and we left without another word. The aftermath was immediate, spectacular, and utterly devastating for Diana and Michael, a financial apocalypse executed with Eleanor's characteristic silent ruthlessness. 2 days later, they received a single, certified letter from Eleanor's private trust attorney. The letter was an immediate, non-negotiable notice. All discretionary financial support was immediately and permanently terminated. The subsidies for their mortgage, their children's private school tuition, and their allowances were all zeroed out, effective immediately. Furthermore, the letter included a detailed, legally precise accounting of all the funds provided over the last 10 years, accompanied by a final cutting clause. Eleanor was legally initiating the process to have the trust's ownership interest in their heavily subsidized house liquidated to recoup her investment. Diana and Michael, who had spent years living $10,000 above their actual means, were instantly facing foreclosure. pulling their kids out of private school and massive, insurmountable debt. Diana called David in a frantic rage, screaming about my betrayal and demanding I recant my statement to Eleanor. David, strong and finally free from her control, simply repeated the truth I had taught him. You filed a false police report against my wife over a fake $150 bill after you stood up my son's party. You brought law enforcement and legal fraud to the family. Eleanor is simply holding you accountable for your own actions. You did this to yourselves. Their luxurious life, built entirely on a foundation of lies and Eleanor's silent support, collapsed completely. They were forced to sell their house at a loss, pull their children out of the prestigious private school they couldn't afford, and move into a small, rented apartment, their social standing utterly destroyed by the quiet implosion of their finances. I never received the $1,850 nor did I need it. The true satisfying payment was the absolute, total justice delivered by the one person whose disapproval they feared most, of a consequence that was entirely self-inflicted by their arrogance and their unforgivable decision to file a false police report against me over a children's birthday party. And so, that's the complete shocking story of how my sister-in-law and her husband ghosted my kid's birthday, tried to charge me a fraudulent $1,850, and escalated the situation by filing a false police report, only for me to present the documented evidence of their legal fraud to the family matriarch, who responded by completely terminating their secret financial support, leading to their immediate, spectacular financial ruin and the total collapse of their entitled lifestyle. If you stuck with me through this entire unbelievable saga, thank you for letting me share my truth. Like this video if you believe that the ghosting and the fraudulent police report demanded the most absolute, unassailable financial justice, and that Eleanor's quiet, decisive move was the perfect revenge, and hit that subscribe button for more stories where the entitled finally face the consequences of their actions. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Do you think Diana and Michael will ever recover from this, or has their toxic entitlement finally ruined them for good? I'll see you all in the next story.